So we will now call Delegate Ebersol for HB 1492.
With your permission, Madam Chair, a couple people to the panel with me.
Yes.
Thank you.
Who do I have? I have Megan Royden, Diamond Tay Brown, Paul Lindley, and Curtis Johnson. Is that correct?
I bet Diamond Tay loves it that you pronounce her name correctly, too.
You said what?
I bet Diamond Tay loves it that you pronounce her name correctly.
I know the name.
Can't miss a trick
And
there.
Chair Wells, Christina is not testifying, but she was just going to pull up just for questions.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
I think there may not be a chair for her.
She's just right
unfortunately.
here.
Oh, okay, got it, if needed. Perfect, okay.
We have somebody from MSEA also, Paul Lemley.
All right, we might have to play musical chairs.
It's okay with you if we drag one up?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Well, I don't want to, I want to crowd your game here.
Thank you for asking for permission,
Sure,
Delegate.
absolutely. And thank you for hearing House Bill 1492. For the record, I'm Eric Ebersol, and testifying this bill. I've been meaning to do this bill for a while, okay? And I'm so pleased that Baltimore Teachers Union and MSEA and the Librarians Union, AFSCME, came to me and asked me if I would give it a shot this year, and I think it has a good shot. I'm thinking about like if I was getting a roof put on my house, and I didn't really have enough funds when I started, and I realized as I got into it that I wasn't going to be able to pay the roofer. Better? Thank you. I might go out to him and say, I really can't pay you for the rest of this job. Now, he'd have a couple of options at that point. He could try to help me finance it or say, do you think you'll have it later? Can you wait? But he might just say, well, I'm done then. I'm out. I'll take what money I've got and I'll go, which would be unfortunate, but it's an option for him in that situation. Now, in the 90s, I was a teacher, and we signed a contract with the school system that I worked for. I'm not going to name them because there's no reason to bring them into it, but you can probably guess if you know anything about me. And we signed a 3-year contract, and in the middle of the second year, they said, we really don't have the funds for this. Really sorry. We're not going to be able to do it. It was a contract. I was shocked. They're not going to meet a contract. We really didn't really have anything to do because state law says one of the things we cannot do in that situation is take a job action where we walk off the job, like the roofer. Now, I'll admit to you, a roof is not as valuable a thing as children, so the analogy does drop down a little bit there. But we did do something. We said we're going to work to rule. We have a contract that says these are the things we have to do, these are the hours we have to work. We're not going to grade papers outside of the workday. We're not going to sponsor clubs that we're not paid for. We're not going to write college recommendations because we don't get paid for that. It took about 2 days with us suggesting we might do that for the county to come up with a really reasonable compromise that we could live with and that worked okay. We still didn't get everything, but that's always true in negotiations. And so now we come to Baltimore County. I'm naming them. Probably shouldn't have, but I did. They signed a contract with the teachers of Baltimore County, a 3-year contract. And at the beginning of this year, they said, sorry, we don't have funds. And what did those teachers have to do? Now, this was at the beginning of the year, and they were kind of stuck. And so they compromised in good faith. But what basically happened is they got the raises and increases that they got halfway through the year. Well, I don't want to make that sound like that's getting your raise. That's half of what they were due. They didn't have an option. They didn't have an option. Now, it could go to binding arbitration, but that often doesn't work out in the areas of money because binding arbitration has a little trouble offering money that a county says they don't have. And so what they did is they took half. They didn't have the option to say, we might need to do a job action. We might need to step out. Because if they do that, the teachers can lose their certifications. Imagine that, being pitched out and saying, you did this, you no longer are qualified to teach. That upsets me because in so many places where people negotiate, they have this option. And so it's really important to me that we look at that, and I'm going to include also all the examples I've done are teacher examples because that's what I was, but librarians are in a similar situation. They also need to be considered. Now, I don't want teachers to go on strike. I don't want librarians to go on strike, and I don't think they actually will. Back to the job action in the 90s, it only took us a few days of suggesting the kind of inconvenience that would be imposed upon the system and the people who were in the system, students and parents, for them to say, okay, let's come up with something here, rather than just saying, oh, sorry, no. And it was important that that was something that we could do, but it really wasn't enough, wouldn't be enough in the situation I described second that occurred just recently in a county that near me or that I might live in. So really, it's very important to me that we begin to extend this bargaining tool to our teachers and librarians in the state. And so I would like to ask you for a favorable report on this bill. And some people sitting with me are going to ask you for the same. Thank you.
Sorry, wait, please, folks, we don't, no public acknowledgement.
If I can do one thing
allowed.
at
Thank
the
you.
end, if a lot of people came, we really held the testimony down so we wouldn't kill you all.
Yes.
If they could stand up
Absolutely.
so they could be recognized. Maybe they could do that right now. If you're here supporting this bill, would you please stand up?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I
See you all.
appreciate your
Thank you.
indulgence.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Diamond Tay Brown, and I'm the president of the Baltimore Teachers Union. And I urge, oh, sorry.
I'm too loud. You're not loud enough, you know.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Diamond Tay Brown. Oh, okay. And I'm the president of the Baltimore Teachers Union, and I urge the committee to vote in favor of House Bill 1492. Although we are asking for public school employees and public librarians to have the right to strike, some people equate this demand to us wanting to go on strike. We do not want to go on strike, but we do want the right to strike because we believe that having the right to strike will balance the power between workers and employers at the bargaining table. School staff need more power at the bargaining table so that we can improve our students' learning conditions, which are our working conditions. With strike power, unions have won smaller class sizes, nurses and social workers in every school, more service for homeless students, naps for pre-kindergartners, school counselors, more librarians, a commitment to reduce testing by 50%, more green spaces in schools, and the end of random searches targeting students of color. We want these same things for our students, so please give us more power to fight for our students and the broader community by voting favorably on House Bill 1492.
Good afternoon, Chair Wells, Vice Chair Kerr, and members of the committee. My name is Megan Royden, and I'm the proud president of AFSCME Local 6359, Maryland Library Workers United. We represent the dedicated workers of public library systems throughout the state, including at Howard County Library System, where I work as an instructor and research specialist. I'm here today in support of HB 1492. This bill gives public school employees and public library workers the right to strike, a fundamental tool necessary to put workers on an even footing with management during bargaining. Striking is not a first option, but a last resort. No worker wants to go out on strike. It means they will be going without a paycheck. However, this tool is necessary to incentivize good faith negotiations between management and labor. Often, workers don't even need to go on strike. Just the act of authorizing the right to strike is enough to restart stalled negotiations and make meaningful progress at the bargaining table. Both management and labor are incentivized to avoid strikes. In labor relations, the goal is not conflict, it's resolution. Negotiations are at their best when both sides are encouraged to negotiate in good faith and when neither side holds all the power. It encourages earlier settlements, stronger agreements, and ultimately more stable workplaces. For the public school employees and library workers who serve our communities every day, this bill helps ensure their voices are heard and their working conditions can be fairly negotiated. And when workers have a strong voice in their working conditions, services improve. Strong worker rights create stronger public institutions. A fair union contract lets our members show up at work every day at their best and enables them to serve the community with excellence. Ultimately, fair contracts support strong public services for our communities. I respectfully urge the committee to support HB 1492. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair Wells and Vice Chair Kerr. My name is Curtis Johnson Jr., and I'm speaking as a member of the Baltimore Arrows Youth Table and Baltimore City Youth Councilman, representing District 12. In my role, I spend a lot of time listening to what young people in our community are experiencing in their schools. Students often talk about crowded classrooms, not having enough counselors, and school libraries that need more resources. These challenges affect how students learn and how supported they feel every day. Teachers and librarians see these same problems firsthand. However, in Maryland, they are not allowed to strike. Without that option, educators do not always have the power to push for the changes that students truly need. Repealing Maryland's no-strike law would give educators another tool to stand up for young people. When teachers and librarians advocate for better conditions, they are also advocating for smaller class sizes, more mental health support, stronger libraries, and better learning environments. This issue is not just about workers' rights. It is about making sure that students receive the support they deserve. When educators have a stronger voice, young people benefit both inside and outside the classroom. Thank you for the opportunity to share my perspective.
Good afternoon, chairs and members of the committee. My name is Paul Lemley. I'm MSCA president, representing 76,000 educators who do not get rich on the job, and we're in strong support of House Bill 1492. I'm going to enumerate many of the wins for parents and kids. As educators, we stand with and for our students, our families, and our communities. There are times when that advocacy must extend beyond the building walls. We call this bargaining for the common good. And in Los Angeles, Chicago, Oakland, and places where it is on the books illegal, like Massachusetts and West Virginia, we've demonstrated that progress was possible when educators, with the support of parents and the larger community, withheld their labor. Union demands for student and family supports led to positive and sustainable changes in these districts. We won increased funding. You heard President Brown talk about class size and green spaces and other things. I'll add to that list safer buildings, better policies, immigration and housing assistance, social workers, crisis response, and mental health specialists like psychologists. Because of this teamwork, educator strikes have enjoyed strong support from parents, and in many cases, parents have joined educators on the picket lines. Parent power people, take note, according to polling, 84% of parents would support a strike for more public school funding and greater teacher decision-making power in district policies, and 74% of parents stated that they would support a strike for higher educator pay. The UN's International Labor Organization considers the right of workers to strike as a fundamental human right. 12 states in this country have protected that right for educators. Strikes are not our goal. We urge the committee to issue a favorable report and invite your colleagues to go on record on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the bill sponsor and to the panelists. We have some questions from the committee. We'll begin with Delegate Fair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you so much to the panel for speaking, and thank you, Delegate, for bringing the bill forward. A common challenge that we hear when we're talking about negotiations always seems to be around people's anxiety about salary. They think that all of this comes down to your salary. But what I found interesting in all of your testimony was you were talking about workplace conditions. And so, Ms. Brown, so we can zero in on a person to answer the question as efficiently as possible. When you say workplace conditions, can you help us understand, we're not just talking about your salary at the end of the day, we're talking about a lot more than that. Can you help us understand what those are, what that can look like?
Absolutely. For example, we are asking for things like our art teachers to have windows that open in their classrooms, because when students are doing their artwork, they're working with fumes and paints, and we think it's not healthy for them to be in a classroom with windows that don't open. We also ask for things like, we have to unfortunately negotiate and fight really hard for things like green folders. If you guys don't know, when a student has an individualized education plan, until it's digitized, it goes into these really big green folders, and there's special folders. You need a 2-hole puncher to punch holes in them, and we have negotiated before had to have more green folders. We have had to negotiate for our audiologists in the Baltimore City School District. We have 7 audiologists. We asked for them to have running water, a running and working sink, so that when they're cleaning the students' ears, they have something, so that they can have, so the earwax has somewhere to go. We have not been able to accomplish that yet. So these are just a few examples of working conditions that are intertwined with our students' learning conditions that we fight for. And I have several more examples if you like.
No, I appreciate
Madam
that.
Chair, if I may.
Please.
No, one of the things that people misunderstand here is that teachers are just grabbing for more money. God knows they should, okay? But mostly they just want to do a good job. If you ask teachers what's important to them, they will tell you, I want money. I want good health care. They will also say, I want good working conditions, because most teachers get into the job because they want to do it well for their kids. I often say these unions are one of the rare unions that works for not only their constituents, the people who are members of their unions, but the people they serve as well. And that's very important to us.
Thank you, Delegate. And Curtis, first, thank you for coming out and testifying today, and not just advocating for yourself, but advocating for other people. And so it's not easy to be an advocate, as a young person, day in and day out. So thank you for that time. I wanted to ask you to share your experience that you've had when you walk into a school system and you can see the frustration that a teacher has because they don't have the necessary resources to be able to serve you as a student in that school system. Have you experienced that before? I should start there. Have you ever experienced that?
I would say that when I go into different schools, because I've worked in different schools with children on another program, TDP, but I've seen that it can be very frustrating having to have kids that take materials that might be meant for during the day for other students, and having to share those same resources for kids all over. Like when you have kids having after school programs, and you have kids that come from the group I work in, which is CDP. It's very frustrating when your stuff is not put back in the same place, and also it costs, because then you have to replace it if it's broken or if it's dirty. And not only that, but the room conditions can be pretty bad. Some schools I wouldn't name any schools in specific, but the conditions of those schools can be like, you'll have snacks and things all around that of course kids would eat, but it would be infested with mice and rodents. That's not what the children eat in those conditions.
And in your opinion, as you watch those students throughout the school system struggle in those situations, do you think that maybe they're struggling to learn in those environments?
I think so. I think it's not only disgusting, but it's really hard to concentrate when you have rodents that you can see in the corner of your eye trying to take a test during the school day. And it's not fun.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Or thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Delegate Fair asked one of my questions, and so part of my questions were answered. But I think it's safe to say, those of you, either educators or librarians, none of you got into this to get rich, and that's not what you're looking for.
We knew we weren't.
Thank you. So I just want to quickly ask, private employees have a right to strike, is that correct?
Yes.
And so if you were working for a corporation, you wouldn't need anybody to authorize you to strike. It's a right that's in, okay, thank you. And so because you don't have the right to strike, I think this was mentioned in some testimony, what happens if you can't come to agreement with the employer?
Well, for our process, when we can't come to an agreement with the employer, the next step is mediation. The employer and the union gets to choose a mediator by crossing off mediators that are available. And then when they settle on a mediator, then they have sessions with the mediator. And the mediator helps the two parties come to an agreement. If the two parties can't come to an agreement, then the mediator has the option, can write up a decision. And if the two parties can agree to if the two parties agree to the decision, then that is the settlement. But if one of the parties don't agree to the decision, then the next step would be going to the Public Employee Relations Board. At that point, whatever the Public Employee Relations Board decides is set in stone. There is no ratification from the membership. It is just whatever is decided at the PERB.
And so because one side is the employer and the employees' jobs and everything are dependent on that, there's sort of an imbalance of power without any kind of leverage. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely, it's true. The employer has much more authority, power, access, and resources than the unions have.
Thank you.
Delegate Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the teachers union president, the bill is for collective bargaining for all employees of the public school system statewide?
Yes.
So it's a statewide?
Yes.
Sorry?
There's two teachers union presidents up here.
Okay, sorry. I thought you were the head of the state teachers
For
union.
clarity, BTU.
Baltimore's. Yeah,
Okay.
so
Go ahead.
Sorry, thank you.
different national affiliates, but ask to whoever you want to ask.
No, so to the state teachers union president, it's statewide?
Yes, statewide bill.
And would the bill contemplate striking by teachers and others in the public school system during the school year when children are in school?
It's possible.
Okay. And is there a limitation on how long that strike could be?
Not in the bill. There's been 800 educator strikes in the U.S. in about the last 20 years. The average length of time is about a day. So there's not a prescribed time in the bill.
So in other words, there could be a strike during the school year, and in which case the students wouldn't be going to school because obviously there would be no one there to teach them, presumably.
Well, that's not necessarily true. When businesses have their people go on strike, administrators and bosses come in and keep things going. I'm sure the schools would be charged with making sure that the students were there. What would happen is they wouldn't get the high quality education of the people that they should be paying.
I'd also like to add that our strike law is very expansive. And so our strike law includes a work stoppage, a slowdown of work. And so right now, a lot of school staff members give a lot of additional free time. So if we were to we wouldn't have, first of all, as we've reiterated, we don't want to go on strike. We believe if we have this leverage, we would not have to. Unfortunately, most of the strikes the teachers go on are in those places where strikes are illegal. But
No,
if we were to, our first step most likely would not be to be outside of school buildings. We would start with something like maybe a work slowdown where we're not giving so much free time to the after-school activities, the before-school activities, and things like that. Unfortunately, right now, if we were to even just work to our contract, what we actually get paid for, that would be considered a strike.
Okay. So I guess this to the state teachers union president. You folks had lobbied the legislature very And I'm trying to keep the answers short because there are other people want to ask questions. So I'm trying to be mindful of their time as well. You folks, you lobbied very hard because I was here for the blueprint, which included all kinds of sweeping changes, including pay scales and so forth. And why is that not working? Because it hasn't even been fully implemented, and or it's been implemented in large part. What am I missing here?
Nothing, sir. I think the blueprint is working well. Community schools are achieving good results. The starting pay, we think, has reduced vacancies, and there's more work to do. As you've heard, we think the right to strike, or really the prohibition on penalties for educators who would do that, is a tool to achieve some of the aims that we were talking about here, like the wins for parents and kids.
Is there merit pay in the public school system?
No, there's an incentive for reaching your national board certification.
Okay. How about for students that are learning versus those that aren't?
No.
I mean, 84% of Baltimore City schools, students in the 8th grade in Baltimore City are illiterate. That is a fact. So my question is how do we fix that problem, and how do we square that with collective bargaining and the right to strike when so many students aren't learning? And you're smiling, but I mean,
that's because everybody's chomping at the bit to answer that question.
Right.
For you. That's why
This
we're
We
whole
have
table
answers.
wants a piece of that.
I got this.
And to be fair, we can talk about it offline too, because they're the people who ask questions. So.
I would say in the large picture, if you make this an attractive state to teach in, and this is one part
you
of it,
have.
then you will, and if you continue to do that, you may attract the best and the brightest.
Will.
Last year, will. Okay, there you go. I think that's part of it. You know, people would say, if I go there, I have greater rights as a teacher. Maybe I should go in Maryland and teach.
And that was my point about, and I'll just finish here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it, and I'll finish up right now. But that was my point to the folks sitting behind you about merit pay, connecting pay with results. Right, everybody else has it, but.
In Baltimore City, I wanted to speak to Baltimore City because we do have a connection. Unfortunately, in city schools, our pay is directly connected to our evaluations. And our evaluations consist of formal observations of our classrooms, planning, and it's pretty much like 9 T roles. We are the only jurisdiction in the state of Maryland where our pay is directly tied to evaluations. And I believe that we could increase our students' literacy rates if we had better learning conditions for them.
Delegate Sample Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the bill delegate and all those who are assembled today to share and enlighten us, actually. I did wanted to just ask you, because while you were speaking, Madam President, with regards to the art teachers and the sink to have running water, et cetera, do you quantify, like, and this may be for the state president, but do you quantify like how many of those same issues are showing up in other parts of the state as well? I'm just curious because, and if you could, two more examples, if you don't mind, because I'm learning while you're doing this. What other 2 examples that you wanted to share as to what the challenges are within the school environment? And I would like to know that. But again, is that quantified so we get a bigger picture and say, well, 30 school jurisdictions don't have windows for art teachers. You know what I mean? So I was just trying to understand it on a higher level.
President Lemley could speak more to this, but I would say two issues that you could quantify across the state are excessive caseload and class sizes, and staffing shortages and retention.
Definitely, and we do try to identify those issues wherever they happen. Where there's air quality issues, it may not be the fumes from art projects, it might be mold. But yes, we definitely try to identify them everywhere and work to improve them everywhere.
So that's when you take that, I guess, document and show that we have X number of schools that are experiencing this particular issue. This number of schools don't have sinks for the audiologist. Is that how it's done, sir?
It can be. I guess what I was talking about when I said bargaining for the common good, I meant that we would identify those as actual proposals for our contract and say, hey, you know, every art teacher needs a ventilated space. But yeah, we would try to collect that data. Do we do it now statewide on all of those issues? Not necessarily, but there are some things that we do try to identify, like class sizes, per pupil funding, you know, staff ratios, like Diamante said about psychologists and mental health.
Yeah,
So
and those
if
are
you're-
almost a given, you know what I mean? So when you came down all the way down to those specific things, I think it woke me up a little bit more to say, wow, you know, this is real. So I think it might be beneficial to start collecting that information just for knowledge purposes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Delegate Chisholm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Delegate, for bringing the bill. So I was going to show you something real quick. This is a text from my wife last night, who's an occupational therapist in Prince George's County school system. I hear about IEPs all day. To go pick up a shelf for one of her schools. And I do know that this is a problem. And, you know, she's constantly taking stuff to school or wherever, you know, she travels around, or even to the students that she's trying to help. My question always is, because this is the baffling part, especially, you know, for me as a conservative Republican, when we look at these issues, it's like we're always on the teacher side, right? And when I look at the numbers, this is where it baffles me. I think, and I've talked to the union president, I've asked you this question before, that our teacher to student ratio is 15 to 1. Our average per student is now $19,000 and 400, and I think it's $19,400. That equals $290,000 per classroom. And I'm always lost on where's the money, if we're, because I know how much we're paying the teachers. It's not a lot of money. So where's the delta of all of this? And that's the question we keep asking. And before you answer, I think the most important question I want to ask is, I want to ask the student, because I think you're probably going to give me the most honest answer. In your, not that question. I'm going to give you a different question, because I think this is the heart of the matter. When we're talking about learning environments, do you have friends, or do you know experience, or people or kids that are trying to making a good faith effort to make it to school, but they're getting the crap beat out of them, or they're getting roped into gangs, or they just don't have that support staff that can let them get to that school system? Because I don't think teachers in Baltimore City are any worse than they are in counties where they're doing better. I think the environment for students in their neighborhood sometimes, or even in their families, is so difficult that they're not able to even learn to make it to school. And you see that in Baltimore City and in some other, even in Prince George's County, where my wife is. Do you see that experience? Do you see anybody that it's just so difficult for them to even learn because of, you know, either their neighborhoods or their family structure? And I'm gonna tell you why I'm asking the question in a second. Go ahead.
Well, I would say that what makes it really difficult to get an education is trying to get to school. Our public transportation system is really, really inefficient. And when trying to have thousands of students all trying to depend on one bus to get to school, and it comes every 30 to 40 minutes, that makes it all the more difficult to get there and get the education. And then not only that, but you have to go, as a high schooler, you have multiple periods to go to. And you have a busy schedule. Sometimes school is the only break that you get throughout the entire day, and they don't really have a time. Sometimes I've spoken to students where literally their entire schedule is packed, where they don't have a time to go speak to a school counselor, or they don't even know that these resources exist, because most of the time their caseloads are overloaded, or those resources aren't really at the forefront for them to see or know about to go speak to those counselors. So
Right.
does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And the reason I asked the question is I am always been a huge proponent, I know it's favorable in here, of school choice, because I think there's a lot of students that are in this example that you just gave where it's very difficult, whereas we have students that could thrive in a different environment. But because of the system we've designed here in the state of Maryland, it's not because of lack of money. The teachers aren't getting the money for some reason, but to me, I think that we need to have the money follow the student rather than the money follow the bricks, which evidently are deteriorating. And I know for sure that a lot of these environments in these school buildings are not good and they're not conducive for learning. And I don't know if money is going to solve it because the money seems to be going somewhere else. If somebody could answer or explain to me why not giving children more choice so that they really can thrive, and then when they get out of high school, they get on the economic ladder up, rather than we have so many kids that just can't even, they get through high school, but they really don't have a good education, and now they're stuck, and we've created generational poverty.
Delegate, there's a lot of things I agree with you with, but I want to make one correction. We wish that we had a ratio of 15-1.
I know you don't, teacher.
I'm not
that's just a
certain
number.
what teacher has that ratio unless they have maybe a self-contained classroom. Most of the time, teachers are teaching classrooms anywhere between 30, 40, and 50 students. And then when you get to classes like physical education, art, music, we're literally warehousing students. You can have 60 to 100 students in a classroom with one teacher, because we talked about staffing shortages earlier. And I'll say, we believe that there are things that need to be prioritized. And what we're saying is, yes, money is important. We think people should be fairly compensated. We think we need to have the money for resources, but we also have to make things a priority. And the reason why we're here fighting to have this leverage is because our employers, the school districts, don't have the same priorities that you just mentioned that our students are saying and that we're saying. We want to improve our students' learning conditions. But when things come down to just bodies, numbers, and dollars, then people get into what decisions they have to make. And they don't get the chance to think about the human being and what's happening on the way to school and all of these different barriers. And so we believe that our students deserve a lot more support. We believe that funds should be going to our students first for the resources that they need. But unfortunately, sometimes that's not the decision that our employers make. And if we had more power at the bargaining table, we would make sure they made those type of decisions.
Yeah, and I thank you for correcting a reference. That's not, when you take the total number with the total number of teachers and students, that's where that 15-1 comes from, and I think anybody could look that up. And I agree with you. I know for sure that your classrooms are packed. My question always is, in Anne Arundel County, where's everybody else? Oftentimes I find that they're at Riva Road getting paid, but they're not in the classroom, and I don't know how to fix that. But I agree with you 100% that the money, you just said, it should be following the student so that they are really, every student's different, right? Every environment's different. So if the money followed the student, we would have a much more flexible public school system, because look, not a single person in this state benefits from a student that doesn't come out of high school ready for the next step, that is not ready to get on that economic ladder upwards. Because right now I look at this and it's sad, because I'm like, what are we doing to improve the students' lives? And I know you're fighting for them, and I greatly appreciate that. I just can't always wrap my head around, all right, what are we really doing? Because we're spending a lot of money, but we seem to be getting the same bad results. Let's entrust the students and their parents to figure out where they best can learn is what mine. But I appreciate it. Thank you.
At least part of that would be attracting the best and the brightest teachers, okay? And, I'll often say, we paused collaborative time in the blueprint last year, but if you build it, they'll come. That's, to me, the very first step is is to attract teachers from across the state. We know how many vacancies there are. We know how many people are teaching who are not yet certified. And that's part of it. You're right. There are other things. I will say with regard to school choice, the city has a sort of fluid system for students who attend school. But one of the problems is some students don't have the agency to get to the school they want to go to. Some students do. And we all know that that has to do with probably quite often their financial situation.
Right, and I appreciate it. Look, we're all together on this, on the problem. It's just the solution is sometimes tough. Thank you.
Delegate Siliberti.
Thank you, sir. There's a gentleman who appears on television, quite a prominent commentator and also a researcher. He's written a book called Failure Factories, and it deals specifically with the school system in Baltimore City. So my question, well, a lot of questions, but to summarize it, how do you respond to the criticism of failure factories?
First of all, I got that book, but I had to return it because it was worth more than the amount I'm allowed to take as a gift. So, so I did. He pretty much gave that book to everybody, but I didn't really feel that it would be appropriate for me to accept that gift. So I can't respond to parts of it because I really didn't get to read it.
And we're kind of getting off the bill at this point.
Yeah, I think we are too.
I'm not familiar with that book, so I don't want to speak to something I didn't read yet.
Well, how about the phrase failure factories?
Failure factories?
That's how he has designated most of the schools in Baltimore City. Not very complimentary, to say the least.
No,
so I was just curious how you respond.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of bad narratives about Baltimore City public schools. One of the things I'll say is that we have great staff and we have great students. And what we're looking for co-conspirators to help us make our school system better, to make Maryland State public schools better. And there are some things that we can do better in our school system. We could have a full school bus fleet so that way our students have a way to get to school and they don't rely on the MTA, and maybe we can decrease our 45% chronic absenteeism rate. All the other 23 jurisdictions have a school bus fleet. We should have one too. We could also—
I know you're answering the question, but
sorry,
we kind of strayed far away from the purpose of this bill.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Delegate Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the remarks most recently made by Delegate Chisholm and Delegate Siliberti, my colleagues, who I know care very much about our public school system, and I know they both sort of referenced kind of school choice stuff. So my question is, obviously there are a number of members of this body who think that the education system as a whole would be better off if more public dollars flowed to either private schools or to charter schools. My question is, isn't it true that private school teachers can strike?
Per my understanding, they don't have a prohibition on striking.
And isn't it true that, in fact, in places like Philadelphia, Catholic school teachers have gone on strike in recent years to try to get better working conditions?
Yes.
Absolutely.
And so wouldn't it be silly, in your opinion, or at least I'll say in my opinion, it's silly to advocate for school choice on one hand and for vouchers and for private schools on one hand, and yet deny public school teachers the exact same rights that private school teachers already have to make their work conditions better? Isn't that so?
Yes.
All right, thanks.
Seeing no more questions for the sponsor panel, I will call up the next favorable panel. Thank you, Delegate
We shouldn't have too many. I don't know how we did, but we shouldn't have too many. We really tried to control it for y'all.
I have another favorable panel, Adam Redden, Pia Morrison, Sarah Gillen, okay, and just a reminder, witnesses get 2 minutes to testify. Whoever's prepared, go ahead and start.
Thank you to Chairman Wells and committee members. My name is Adam Redden. I'm a public school teacher in Harford County Public Schools, speaking on behalf of the Greater Baltimore Democratic Socialists of America, GBDSA. We respectfully submit this letter of support for House Bill 1492, collective bargaining, public employees, revocation of certification, and school and libraries employees' right to strike. This bill would repeal the ban on striking for public school teachers and librarians, ending years of unconstitutional restrictions on the First Amendment rights of our state's educators. First, we would like to thank Delegate Ebersol for sponsoring this important legislation and the chair and other members of the committee who have signed on as co-sponsors. It is great to see that this newly formed committee is committed to advancing labor rights from the start. We are writing to ask the committee both to advance House Bill 1492 and to stress its urgency and necessity. In 2025, school districts across the state did not receive the local funding they needed to provide safe and quality education to our students. In my own time as a public school teacher, I have watched class sizes increase as funding decreased. Meanwhile, us educators are denied by state law the only tool available to the working class and promised to us by the First Amendment, the right to peacefully protest by going on strike. Our schools are not just underfunded, they are unsafe for educators and students alike. Despite years of effort, our teachers and students continue to be exposed to lead-ridden water, rodents in classrooms, and mold in our walls. Over the last 5 years, there have been 397 school shootings. Meanwhile, a lack of security results in administrators having to email staff security camera footage and asking them, who is this? I have bared witness to this myself here in Anne Arundel County. Where was I? Currently, there is nothing teachers and librarians can do except ask politely while we wait and hope in vain for change that never comes. Opponents of this bill will cynically say that teachers and librarians will strike. I ask for a favorable vote.
Honorable Chairwoman Wells and members of the committee, my name is Pia Morrison, and as president of SEIU Local 500, I am here representing the voices of more than 20,000 working people, including over 10,000 educational support professionals. Let's be candid about what this bill really is about. It's about power and fairness. Right now, when negotiations break down, school employees are expected to simply accept whatever the employer decides. They are told to trust the process that too often leaves workers underpaid, understaffed, and ignored. Meanwhile, the same workers who feed our students, drive our buses, support the education of our disabled students, and keep our schools clean and safe are denied the most basic leverage that workers across the economy rely on, and this bill changes that. This bill simply recognizes that public school and library employees are workers, and workers deserve the same fundamental right to strike afforded their colleagues in the private sector. It also protects workers from retaliation, because no one should risk losing their livelihood for standing up for fair treatment. I want you to understand that striking is never a first choice. It is a deterrent that ensures both sides find resolution at the negotiations table. It is a tool that is utilized by workers when every other path has failed. The truth is simple. Employers only bargain fairly when workers have real power at the table. And without balance, collective bargaining becomes little more than collective begging. And when support staff are forced to work for wages that don't keep up with the cost of living, when they have to work in buildings that jeopardize their health and make them sick, when vacancies go unfilled, and when burnout drives experienced workers out of our schools, the students pay the price too. If Maryland truly values the people who make our public schools function every day, then we must treat those workers with the same rights that others already have. SEIU Local 500 urges a favorable report on HB 1492, and thank you.
You don't need to push the button.
Oh, I don't have to press. All right, thank you. It says that. So my name is Sarah Gillen. I am a TAC member, and I am also a member of the Greater Baltimore DSA, and I am here in support of House Bill 1492. So I am a career changer, and I am new to education, and I am new to the union. I wanted to say to you that I came into this work as a career changer because I knew as a 23-year-old woman that I could not afford to do this job with one job and be able to afford my housing costs in New York City. And I thought coming here to Maryland to do it, things would be a little bit better. And I was wrong, because this year now, I have a second job in order to be able to pay my bills. And that gets in the way of me being able to do what I need to do for my kids. So now I'll give you my prepared testimony. Counties and boards of education may sit across the table from teachers and bargain, but our bargaining power is not equal. And it can't be fair when we're forced to accept inadequate pay and working conditions, or my alternative is to quit the job I have waited my life to do. The right to strike is the equalizer at that bargaining table. And I am not a greedy woman, but I want to be able to do my job to be able to do my day job alone so that I can give my personal time to planning for my kids. Class size, the built environment, and safety all matter to student learning, but my ability to bargain over these is stifled because my voice, my speech, is effectively banned. And that's right. I think it is my constitutional right to free speech being suppressed by our state government, because when teachers can't strike, or at least call the strike, then educators' collective voice and collective action are silenced. Students' learning conditions are our working conditions, and we need all the tools to have equal power at that bargaining table. Thank you.
Do we have questions for this favorable panel? Seeing none, thank you all for your testimony. We have two virtual favorable witnesses that we will bring up now. We have Anita Bass and Julian Ohanian. If you're prepared, unmute. If you're watching the live stream, you need to turn that off. You're about 30 seconds behind. But if you're prepared, please unmute Ms. Bass and go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead with your testimony.
Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Anita Bass, and I'm here to speak on House Bill 1492. I'd like to thank the committee, the chair, and Delegate Ebersol, and everybody that's there as visitors watching. The right to strike is not about wanting to walk off the job. It's about fairness. It's about balance. It's about working with your staff together. I forgot to mention this, I am the proud president of Local 4538, which represents Apple Store workers and also Baltimore County Public Library workers. So I'm from the library system. Public library workers and dedicated public servants. They show up every day for their communities. They help families, job seekers, students, seniors. They provide services that keep our communities informed and supported. But dedication should not mean silence. It should not mean accepting unsafe conditions, chronic understanding, or wages that do not reflect their skills. The right to strike is not the first step in a dispute. It is a last resort for workers. We rely on every other effort to resolve an issue. As when workers have the right to strike, strikes are often avoided. And why? Because the existence of that right encourages real serious negotiations before things ever get that bad. Workers are asking for equality. They are asking for the same fundamental labor rights that many other workers already have. The ability to withhold your labor is about dignity. It's about respect, and it's about ensuring that the people who make our institutions great. And I'd like to thank you and ask you for a favorable report on House Bill 1492. Thank you.
And thank you for your testimony. Julian Ohanian, if you are, okay, thank you. Go ahead and begin your testimony.
Hi, thank you. My name is Julie Ohanian. I'm a high school English teacher in Baltimore City, a leader of Greater Baltimore Democratic Socialists of America, the Maryland Right to Strike Coalition, and a member of the Baltimore Teachers Union. I would be there today in person to testify in support of House Bill 1482, but I'm with my toddler currently. So colleagues and I began a campaign for the right to strike because we saw the ways in which the promise of a fair and equal public education wasn't happening. Despite all of our extra hours, all of our going the extra mile that we did as educators. We saw that the ways our public services were being dismantled left and right, on top of decades-long austerity and underfunding, as the Curran Commission documented in clear, stark terms. Although this trend has greatly accelerated in the last year, it's one we public servants have struggled under for far too long. Those of us who serve the public do so because we believe so strongly in what we do that we make it work under impossible circumstances. We teachers continue to teach the skills and love of writing, of reading, problem solving, and critical thinking, even when our students carry with them miles-wide gaps, left gaping from what can only be called institutional neglect. Our classrooms burst at the seams. Our kids lack for foundational reading skills and fluency. The kids who need more support are left to fend for themselves. Instead of providing the skilled support staff and ratios that we know our kids need to get out of this crisis, we pass them off to overextended classroom teachers like me to handle alone, with rosters of 150, 175 or more students, most of whom are struggling. No one is getting what they need. We public servants are the best guardians of the public good that we have. And when we can't strike, we can't secure the working conditions that best enable us to do what we love most, to serve the public, to make sure that everyone is taken care of, and that the least of us have what we need to survive, to transcend our humble beginnings, to flourish. I urge you to grant what shouldn't have to be a question. I urge you to vote yes.
Please wrap up.
Yes, thank you. On House Bill 1482. To fight and to strike for the quality of life for every single person who walks through our doors every day. What do you stand for if not for this? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ohanian. Seeing if we have any questions from the committee for you. All right, seeing as there are none, that concludes our bill hearing on HB 1492.